Rashana Scott. Thanks again for tuning in to another session of the Flippin' and Heels Women Real Estate Investors Virtual Summit. Today I have a powerhouse, a unapologetically gangster tuning in from the East Coast, Miss Ayesha Selden out of Philly. What's going on, girl?
Hi, Rashana. How are you? Yes, out of
Um,
Philly, straight out of Philly.
yeah, born and raised.
Born and raised all day. Yeah.
Okay, okay. Well, yes, I am connected with Aisha via Instagram, as a lot of these uh, newer age relationships are beginning to be formed via social media. And I just saw what Aisha was doing, and I said, I gotta have you on this summit, and I say unapologetically a gangster because she's. I mean, you guys are gonna learn about her, but I love her flow. I love her message and really, the presentation. Like she says, hey, you guys are scared to go into the hood and invest or whatever, but hey, I've just quadrupled my income, by buying this property, 5, 6, 8 years ago. So I don't want to take too much of your shine, Aisha, but go ahead and tell us about yourself.
Yep. So as you mentioned, I'm born and raised here in Philly. So I grew up in what is, I guess, arguably considered a pretty rough part of Philly. I grew up in South Philly, which is actually now very nice. It is probably one of the most gentrified sections of the city. But when I grew up there back in the early to mid 80s, in fact, we left South Philly in the late 90s, it was rough. In fact, the section of South Philly that I lived in was commonly and lovingly referred to as Saigon. There was a housing project directly around the corner from where we lived. We at one point lived in what are now gone, but they were Pashock Homes, a housing project in South Philly. So I guess that's probably why, because I come from the hood, I guess that's probably why I feel more comfortable than most investing in the hood. We didn't grow up in the suburbs. I mean, we lived in the thick of things. So when it came to me initially investing in real estate, and I tried to time it well. I bought my first property, a foreclosure back in 2002. Then I bought another one in 2004. But I didn't start aggressively buying until I saw the market plummet in around 2008, 2009. So I took that as an opportunity. I don't know if you recall, but during the 2008 housing crisis, there was a credit crisis. It was really hard for people to get loans, mortgages. I mean, the subprime mortgage industry basically almost collapsed our entire financial system. So those old no doc loans, people who couldn't get approved for mortgages and were getting mortgages, banks really got really strict on who they gave loans to. And because I actually did have the financial backing to get approved for a loan, I took some equity out of that original foreclosure that I bought back in 2002 and really used that to just go ham. And my first place, of course, that I thought of where I was going to invest heavily since the market had dropped so much was in South Philly. I mean, it was a no-brainer for me. At the time, it was really just, starting to gentrify. The gentrification was maybe still about 5 or 6 blocks away from where I was. So it was like a no-brainer. I saw it coming. People couldn't get loans. So I just went just a few blocks over where it was still relatively rough. I mean, the first house I bought, I paid, I think, $56,000 for that one. And it had been sitting on the market for probably 6 or 7 months. This is the same block. In fact, I have 2 houses on the same block. This one I paid $56,000 for. A few months later, I bought another one for $50,000 on that same block. The house right next door to the first one I bought just sold for $425,000. So for me, and it's funny because at the time, it was an abandoned house that was next door to the one that I paid $56,000 for. And I remember some of my colleagues, I'm in finance, personal finance, very white collar. And a lot of my colleagues were like, don't go south of Washington Avenue, which is exactly where I was. They were like, it's rough, it's hood, there are thugs and drug dealers and all this, shootings and violence and all this, stuff. And I'm like, what are you talking about? Like that's, it's basically 13 blocks from the main artery of downtown Philadelphia. Like, why wouldn't you invest there? It was, for me, a no-brainer, but I don't know, maybe I wasn't scared because that's where I come from.
Okay,
So,
good. So no, this is great. So I want to rewind a little bit. So your first investment, 2002, 2004, those were pretty much conservative purchases. Were those purchases as investors, like your regular 20% down, or well, tell me about those purchases, and then I want to bring it to today's investments that you have going on.
yep. So you got to remember, 2002 was a part of the reason that we got into so much trouble in 2008. When I
Mhm.
first got my property, my intention at the time, I was 24. I was 2 years out of college. I was working as a financial planner, a new financial planner. I was still living. I mean, I commuted to college, so I was still living at home. And kind of my mindset has always been as an investor. I was actually intending. It was a HUD property that I was purchasing. I was intending to stay at home with my mom, buy this property. It was a cosmetic rehab, and I was going to rent it out and just literally be a landlord who lived at home with her mom. Because that's my mom. I'm very close to my family. My mom didn't want me to leave, and I'm like, well, why go pay rent or bill somewhere, and I can
Right.
just kick it here.
Right.
So so, back in 2002, they were giving the original loan that I got for that property. They financed me, and I don't think any lenders do this today, or maybe they do. I don't know. I would hope not, because it got us into a whole lot of trouble last time. But I got like
Mhm.
108% financing on that property. Literally, a bank
Ooh.
gave me. It was either 106 or 108% financing. So the appraisal was not an issue, because again, it was a foreclosure. I only paid $67,000 for the house, and at the time it was worth more than that, but because it was a foreclosed property, so but also back then appraisals were kind of janky. Like everyone, it was like
Mhm. Yeah,
the
everybody.
wild west. Yeah, it was the wild west of financing. So who on what bank on earth would give someone 108% financing
Right.
on a property? But that's what they did. So I
Mhm.
didn't have to come really much out of pocket to acquire it. What I did was, because I had a chunk of money saved, what I did was the rehab I did, all out of pocket. And it was a cosmetic rehab. I mean, it was removing pink carpet,
Gotcha.
painting, fixing, doing minor repairs in the bathroom,
Mhm.
fixing some ceilings, drywall, and and getting in there. As it turns out, one of the fine print documents on that HUD foreclosed property is that it had to be owner occupied. So I actually did end
Mm.
up having to move into it. So I did what made sense for me at the time. I mean, I didn't need a 3-bedroom place to myself, so I ended up what most people call today house hacking. Most people do it in multifamilies. They'll live in one unit, rent out the other, have that person pay the mortgage. So I just got roommates. I had 2 extra bedrooms. So when I initially moved in, pulled in a roommate, and that paid pretty much all of my mortgage. So I was still technically living for free, but I did end up leaving home. And then 2004, I ended up acquiring that property with a partner. That was a more expensive property. It was just a regular MLS listing, but in a really good area out near where I worked, and I actually still own it now. So I actually still
Mhm.
own both of the properties I own
Love it,
still.
love it. Thanks for taking us back down memory lane because it really helps paint the vision, and the picture for people who are looking to get started. Of course, and like you said, hopefully no banks are doing 108 or 106% financing, which I
Crazy.
haven't seen any. Um, but it does paint the picture to for one where you were in terms of your mindset, and then you weren't in a traditional 2 or 3 unit to rent out the other units. So you said I'll just rent out the other bedrooms. I love it.
Yep. Yep.
Fast forward a couple of years, like you said, you bought the property at a foreclosure. The appraisal came back great. I'm sure the value has obviously increased over the years. So now you're able to pull out the equity. And
Yep.
pretty much, for those who are listening, I'll let you explain, what does it mean to have equity in a property, and what's the process as far as pulling the equity out to go purchase more investments.
Yep. So that's a great point, and that segues into probably one of the most important things for me whenever I look at a property. I don't typically get into bidding wars. I think that most of the money is made at acquisition. So it's always important to me to make sure that I have a bit of instant equity when I buy a property. So me getting that building for $67,000 with it just needing cosmetic rehabs, it was probably worth around $100,000 when I initially purchased it. So I already had a bit of I like to call it an equity piggy bank in the property. Basically as soon as I bought it, fixed it up a little bit, and moved into it. Fast forward to the 2008 crisis. Essentially, I'd had the building for 6 years, 7 years, or at the time. So what I did was I went to my bank and said, look, I've got this property. At that point, I'd paid down, 7 years or so worth of the mortgage. So I paid some of the principal down. It was at the time, I think, probably worth around $150,000 or so. I generally kind of overpay my debt just because I'm not a very big fan of leverage or debt. So I think I probably owed maybe $50,000 or $45,000 or so on the property. I went to my credit union and said, look, I'd like to take out a home equity line of credit on this property, so that I can, do some things that I'd like to do. They gave me, I think I ended up getting a line of about $55,000, which was still well below the 70 or 80% loan to value number. So I took that $55,000 that they gave me, and that's what I used as the seed capital to basically start what I think they're calling now, what I know they're calling now, the BRRRR strategy, which at the time I didn't have a name for.
Burr.
Yeah, it just made sense. There was no, back in 2008, 9, 10, 11, there was a Bigger Pockets podcast or something like that. I don't know. I wasn't a big social media person. I wasn't on Instagram.
No, I don't think so. Yeah, no, I
so,
don't think there was anything.
Yeah, so
there were seminars.
Yeah, there were seminars. There were seminars, and I'm not a big, at the time I was, spent most of my professional career. I've spent all of my professional career right out of college as a stockbroker. So I've always worked a whole lot, including weekends, including when I ran an office of hiring stockbrokers. So I've always worked so much. I've never really had the opportunity to have time to go to a seminar or, a guru's, spiel.
Right.
For me, it just has to make sense. And as long as it makes sense, and it made sense to me, where if the stock market's crashed, I've got access to this line of credit, and the housing market's crashed, I can take that money and either park it in stocks, which I was doing through a 401k. But outside of the 401k, I can take money, or this line of credit that I have, and buy what I know at some point will be valuable real estate. And ultimately, if it goes nowhere in value, at least I'll have, renters. So I bought the property in South Philly. I rehabbed it. I had some cash, so I did the repairs out of pocket, because the first place cost me $56,000. I put probably $12,000 to $15,000 worth of cosmetic. This was also a cosmetic rehab. $12,000 to $15,000 or so worth of work that I had saved or accumulated, with my own money. And I got a tenant. I took that lease, because at that point, that new property that I purchased in South Philly didn't have a mortgage on it. I acquired it once again with that original property that I bought back in 2002. So I had that line of credit. I used that to buy it. I financed the rehab out of pocket. So this new South Philly building that I bought had no loans on it. So I went to my bank and said, look, I've got this free and clear property in South Philly. Here's the lease. I've got a girl named Sarah in there. She's paying me, I forget what she was paying me at the time in rent. Can you guys give me money against this building? And they were like, of course we will. You've got,
of course we will.
Yeah, of course we will. You've got good credit. They're like, basically, here's a blank checkbook. Tell us how much you want. And I think at the time they were trying to give me, I don't know, it's probably some big number, but I was like, no, all I need is I put $50,000 into it. I really just want my $50,000 or so back out of it. So that's what I did. I got a line of credit for about $50,000. Actually, sorry, it wasn't a line of credit. I got a home equity loan. I got a home equity loan for $50,000. I took that $50,000 and then I used it to buy the house. Actually, I didn't buy the house across the street. Next, I bought one 2 blocks away. So I took that money, bought a place around the corner, and I literally did the exact same thing all over again. I bought it, I rehabbed it, I put a new tenant in there, and I went back to my bank and said, you'll never believe what I found around the corner.
What I just did.
Yeah, I have another, go figure, I have another free and clear property. Here's the lease. You think you guys could do the same thing for me all over again? And they were like, absolutely. You've been paying your mortgage on this one. You look, everything looks good. And, they gave me another, 50 or 60,000 out of that one. And then I bought a place, right on the same block as the first one. So it literally just, and these were small mortgages, we're talking, if I was pulling 50,000 or 60,000 out of these buildings, the loan on it or the monthly payment on it was like, I don't know, $400 a month or something, ridiculously low at the time. At the time in South Philly, the property taxes were insanely cheap. I mean, I'm talking like $200-300 a year, not month. about two or three hundred bucks a year. And that's one of the reasons why I love the Philly market so much. Our property taxes in general are relatively low. So I had like my payments were very little. So if I was getting $1,000 a month in rent with a $300-400 a month mortgage, I was cash flowing like a ton. And here's I think the disconnect for most new investors. Most new investors, you know, if you're cash flowing $600-700 a month, they start eating that money. You know, they start, you know, the trips to Miami. They've got like suddenly a new, you know, Mercedes. They've got. So I was like, no, screw that. You know, whatever extra cash flow with these three properties. If I was now cash flowing an additional $2,000 a month, I was taking that extra $2,000 a month between those three properties and extra cash flow, and I was just banging it all on, you know, one of those mortgages. So I'm like, I just want to pay this thing off as quickly as possible. And when that one was paid off, I just went to the next one and paid that one off. So, you know, my mindset was totally different. In fact, I still today, I mean, I've been investing in real estate for a long time at this point, since 2002. We're talking 17 years. I still don't spend my rent. So, you know, 17 years later, because my end vision is much bigger, I think, than probably most people allow themselves to think or believe. So, you know, I still today, because I don't have very many mortgages, I spend most of my rent today either acquiring new properties or rehabbing with cash new buildings, you know, that I've already purchased or buildings that are in my inventory. So at some point, you know, I will get to, okay, I feel like I'm 40 now. I'll get to a point where I'm like, well, you know, enough is enough. I've got, you know, very few mortgages, a lot of buildings, and it's like, now how much do I want to ball? Because I've, you know, sacrificed quite a bit.
You're free and clear on everything. I love it. I mean, talk about a retirement plan, right? But I love the fact that, you know, all of this that you're doing, obviously leverage, right? You're leveraging debt the smart way. You know, you're not going out and buying TVs and cars and shoes, you know, on your credit. You're going out and utilizing that for, you know, your next purchase, your next investment. And I love the fact that you're also doing this while you're still working your main 9 to 5, your bread and butter, you know, as a stockbroker. I know you know mentioned that a little bit. So like, while real estate investing was a hobby, I mean, and you know, you mentioned that you do not you know, pocket any of your rental income, but at any given time that you decided that you wanted to, I'm sure you'd be fine. But you know, I love the fact that, like say, you are again, leveraging the opportunities, the resources that you have available to you, and you're not putting all of your eggs in one basket. And matter of fact, you know, the egg is constantly moving from basket to basket, from house to house. So I love it. I love it. So, okay, great. So yeah, so we talked about that, you know, how you got here. So what is here? Where are we as far as, you know, how many properties do you own? What type of projects are you doing? So are you doing mostly single family? Are you doing multifamily? Are you, you know, is there well, we can start there. So just tell us about like your current acquisition strategy, and then what type of projects you're involved in now, and how many properties do you own?
So I own 31 buildings, which I believe it's 40. I think it's around 45 units, because some of them are single family. In fact, most of them are single family, and I have some multifamily units, multifamily buildings as well. I initially, in fact, prior to just maybe 2 years ago, I was all single family, and I love single family properties for a variety of reasons. One, because people tend to stay longer. I've had the building that I bought back in 2004, for example. I've had those same tenants in that property for 8 years now. So
wow.
Single families, people tend to stay longer. You know, it's not like a 1-bedroom or 2-bedroom apartment where they don't really feel like they can grow, or the people upstairs or downstairs are, you know, loud and they can't really, you know, even hear themselves think. So I think there is certainly a value to single family residences, and most of my portfolio, a bulk of my portfolio, is single families. They're also more liquid. You know, when it comes down to selling a property, it's much easier to move a single family because you'd have investors who possibly want to buy it. You'd also have someone who's looking to make it their primary residence that would be looking to buy it as well. So I actually really like single families. With that said, about a year ago, I stopped buying single families unless I had the intention of flipping it, and I don't do very many flips. But I started buying multis because I just want more doors, and I need to accelerate and get as many units as quickly as possible. And I've just found that it's easier to do that buying 3, 4, 5 families at a time. And I've also, I think there are also some just economies of scale. I mean, if I am rehabbing a multifamily, I mean, if there's a tree out back, taking that tree down, is the same cost if I've got a 5 unit versus if I've got a single family, but I'm bringing in 5 times the cash flow or 4 times the cash flow, if as opposed to a single family. Or if I've got to fix the front curb, well, chances are, it's going to cost me the same with a 5 unit that it would with, a single family. So I think there are certainly advantages of that multifamily, but that's pretty much all I'm buying today. I'm trying to get in the commercial space. In fact, I recently had submitted an offer for 2 commercial mixed-use buildings. They were storefronts downstairs with apartments upstairs. So that's probably my next step. But so yeah, 31 buildings, 45 units, and I'm still right now sitting on about 5 mortgages, which annoy the heck out of me, but it is what it is at this point.
Okay, and then tell us, what is your pretty much like your involvement? Like, are you are you analyzing the deals, finding the deals, acquiring the deals, managing the rehabs, managing the tenants? Like, tell us a little bit about your involvement around just all of this, all of these units that you have.
Everything you just said, yes. Everything you just said.
Yes.
I'm very involved, and it's funny because buddies of mine who invest in real estate or have a significant portfolio, they somewhat get on me because of how involved I am. Everyone thinks that, why don't you get a property manager? Why don't you delegate some of the stuff that you're doing? And I certainly believe in the power of delegating and not doing, little things. And I have given away a lot of things. I mean, I used to, in my very first few rental properties, I mean, I would be in there personally ripping out carpet. I would be in there sanding walls. I would be in there I've painted entire houses. I've done all of that stuff. Now I don't do any of that stuff. I mean, I will still do Home Depot runs, drop off supplies occasionally, but like just stuff that I know that needs to get done because I'm a doer, and I don't like when things are not done. But my thought process then, as well as my thought process now, is I need to conserve as much as possible so that I can get as much done so that I can ultimately give away all the stuff that costs me time so that I can do just whatever the heck it is I want to do. So, for example, if you think about, I've got 25 occupied units right now, 25 or 26 occupied units. So right now I'm spending a lot of time not acquiring. I'm spending a lot of my time rehabbing buildings that I purchased over the last several years when the market was really deflated. Because the markets were so cheap, I just was buying as much as possible. And like, I'll get to the rehab. Now I'm at that point where I feel like the market's kind of high. So if a really good deal, like a really cheap deal comes across my desk, I'd snatch it up. But because the market seems a little overinflated to me, I'm very cautious about what I buy and spending most of my time rehabbing the units that I need to get up and running in my inventory. So, that if I had to hire a property manager, for example, for the 25 units that I currently have rented, that would cost me a heck of a lot of money. I mean, you think the average property manager is probably charging somewhere between 8 and 10%. Well, that would be basically someone's like salary in a lot of cities. So,
right.
Do I want to pay someone's annual salary or do it myself and take that 30 grand or so that I get, that I would be paying a property manager? Like in Philly, I could buy a whole new house with that, or I could, that's a rehab budget on a property. So these are the things that I think about, and eventually I will, figure out how I want to handle that. If I want to just essentially have my own property management company and someone who works for me full time, they do all of my property management, and I probably outsource them to do property management for others to offset the cost. These are things that I'll eventually get to. I just have some very short-term goals that I need to get done. And I'd much rather spend that money on either paying down a mortgage, buying a new property, or whatever it is that's going to help this snowball turn into an avalanche.
All right. So many nuggets. I'm like, where do we go from here? No, this is this is really, really good. I mean, we're able to take a look at where you started, where your thought process is now, um, just how you are analyzing properties, and as far as so you're transitioning into, like you said, managing most of the rehab. So are you a licensed contractor?
I am. I just got my GC, and actually just recently, I just got my GC license within the last probably 6 months or so. And a part of the reason, and
Mhm.
I kind of fought it for a while, really because of the liability, the risk. But it's
Mhm.
so hard in Philly to get a good GC. I mean, people want to charge you an arm and a leg just to pull a permit, and their work's kind of janky.
Right.
And you're like, well, I got my own workers who can do it. And they're like, well, then it's, I'll pull the permit for you, but it's going to cost you $1,000. I mean, it's like, so, and then you've got to like worry about, you know, being at the mercy of someone else. So I finally said enough is
Right.
enough and went and got my OSHA training and did all the stuff to form a company that does all of our construction. So yeah, we are licensed contractors now. We have our own team. We actually have a few divisions of our team. We've got laborers, we've got skilled workers, we've got I'm right in the city and it's always kind of loud, but so yeah, we have a couple of crews that do most of the work, but that's really working with contractors is probably one of the hardest things about investing in real estate. I say that to people all the time. It's taken us, and we're still not perfect. It's taken us years to kind of form the crew that we have today, which is why, it's always so funny when people on Instagram ask if they can, use one of my contractors. I get a quick flush of rage, what
Mhm.
the hell do you mean? Can you hold one of my contractors? Of course you can't hold one of my contractors. Because you spend so much time weeding through fire to find good contractors. And if you can get a good contractor, keep them, love on them, treat them well, make them feel
Mhm.
appreciated, a part of the team, because it's hard, especially in a city like Philly, where everyone's just kind of Philly's a very gritty city, and you'll get people who will yeah, I can do it, and wheel and deal and tell you all these things, and they can't, or and I don't even think all the time it's malicious. I think that people just feel like they're better than they are, and you get this crappy project as a result of it.
You're like, I'm sorry to tell you, but your work sucks.
Yeah,
You're not as great,
listen,
as you
listen,
think you are, or as
terrible,
you're trying to present
terrible,
yourself, or like your budget, your prices does not match up with the quality of work that you're trying to give me. Um,
terrible, terrible. I've got this contractor. He just did one of our last rehabs. If I see this man to this day, I would slap him on sight. I mean, this and the issues that we've had, well after. I mean, we're still like, the tenant will
mm,
call me, and it sucks to literally do rehab an entire house. Where I feel like,
mhm,
if I
and still
rehab an
have
entire
problems.
house, and I still you're calling me about things, you should not be calling. And it's not like she's calling me about things that she broke. She's calling me, oh,
Right.
there's a water's leaking into the living room and the bathroom, or my the floors that I put down, they're starting to separate. I mean, things that I just shouldn't hear. So it's tough. I mean, that's finding good people, good contractors is, I think, harder than finding good tenants. I think that is the hardest part about this business.
And then it's probably even harder, or you tell me, your experience of. I mean, you're 18 years and 17 years in the business now, and like you said, working with contractors or finding good contractors is the hard part. What are some challenges that you've had to face or overcome or deal with by not only just dealing with contractors that think they're better than they really are, but as a woman in a
It's
male-dominated industry?
I've literally I've literally seen, from start to finish in a project, I've literally seen about every possible issue that there is. I mean, I don't think that I think, you hear people say I've seen it all. I think at this point I've probably seen it all. Everything from,
I
having
believe
to
you.
having to literally redo in a building I just did. And this is still, I'm like you said, I'm 17 years doing this. We had our last GC. Finally, we're kind of unentangled from working with him, but I had to redo keep in mind, walls were closed. The entire building was closed up. I had to redo the electric. I had to redo the HVAC in a building with the walls already closed. And when I say redo the HVAC, I mean the systems that were put in there were too big for the unit, so it's not even like we could use them. Having to redo electric that was already. I mean, it was as catastrophic as it could possibly get in a building that is 4 units. Walls already closed up. I mean, I've literally had a contractor not show up, and his wife called me and say, he killed himself. I mean, I've literally seen every single. I mean, like at this point, nothing really phases me. It's like, yep, I've probably, I've seen that before. It's absolutely incredible, and I think that obviously as women, we do have. Being in a business where you're dealing with contractors, you see all kinds. I've seen everything from contractors where they literally just want to talk to me, like they feel like they call me, we're talking about a project, and suddenly it's like, do you have a second? Can I just, my wife and we're having some issue. I'm like, what are you telling me for? Like, what are we talking about? Or I've seen, like literally, like, why do you feel like you can talk to me about these? And I don't know if they just feel more comfortable talking, to a woman as opposed to the guys on the site, or I've seen, you get the contractors who hit on you, or the contractors who think, oh, she's a woman, she doesn't know anything, so I get this ridiculously insane price. I mean, I have seen, heard all of it. It's actually quite incredible. It's quite incredible, which is why, especially for new investors, if you don't have an idea of what something should cost you, you have to spend the time to go out and get multiple quotes, get multiple numbers, because people will try you. It's quite interesting.
Yeah, and I mean, I think that's a really great point, because a lot of people, that's their number one question: how do I get started? How do I get going? And that's a great tip. You mentioned, as a new investor, get multiple quotes. Even today, I mean, people who, like you said, you if you call somebody out, you may. I mean, at this point, you're your own GC, you have your own crews, but I'm sure at one point you were getting bids, and for the same amount of work, you might have got one that was, 3 bids, like 30, 60, and 110. It's like, how does that happen on the same work? So, how did you get good at deciphering between that, not necessarily going with the cheapest or the most expensive, or, I mean, I'm just sure obviously it was a lot of trial and error, but were you at the project every single day checking on the quality of work? Walk me through, I guess, like the pain of figuring it out.
Yep. I mean, to your point, some of it was exactly that, just trial by fire. I am certainly a little bit more hands-on. In fact, I remember we had a contractor who told my real estate partner something like he didn't want me there at the job so much. And I'm like, no one cares what you want. Like,
the nerve. Who's paying you?
Yeah, this is my property. And while I can appreciate, you feeling very attached to the job, I'm going to be here. So I am certainly, I'm probably more hands-on than most people. I want to see it. I want to get in there. What did you do, or what are you doing? How does this look? Because a lot of the problems you want to find out early on in the project, like if the floor is sloping and no one's addressing it or fixing it, and you see them ready to put the hardwood floors down, it's like, well, y'all need to fix this slant first before y'all try to put down hardwood floors. So sometimes,
right,
if you're not present, or if you have, no boots on the ground to see exactly what's going on during your job, ultimately that can create more problems for you later. Because, not to say that this is every contractor, because I do believe there are great contractors out there, but a lot of contractors will just do whatever you let them get away with. And if you're not watching, or if you don't have someone watching for you, then you're going to have issues later. So I spend a lot of time, my mornings, my weekends, my nights. I mean, I was at a property meeting with a contractor at 7:45, 8 o'clock last night. So, it does require work. And I I tell people all the time, I think real estate is probably one of the best investments. It is my favorite investment. But real estate is
Mine
not
too.
real estate investing is not necessarily for everyone, because if you don't have the
Mhm.
time, interest, wherewithal, you don't like I
Girl,
don't want
say
to
that.
then
Say
listen,
that.
then you maybe that ain't you. Or maybe
Right.
maybe you invest in real estate in other ways. I mean, there are real estate investment trusts, there are partnerships that you can get involved in. But if you really don't have the time or interest or wherewithal to either be boots on the ground yourself or have boots on the ground, then
Mhm.
you probably should think about a different way, or you're something's going to go wrong, or you're not going to have a quality product.
And it's all about the quality product. I don't care if you're flipping, especially if you're flipping. We watch these shows on TV now, and now everybody wants to flip a house. Everybody thinks they can flip a house, but you plan on doing it. You don't have a contractor, and yes, you can definitely find a contractor, but now you have to build a relationship with them and get to know their work. So for one, a lot of people don't have a contract. For two, they don't have the time. They still work a 9 to 5, which and working a 9 to 5 is fine. But I can imagine, like with you, Aisha, over the years, I'm sure you probably had that flexibility in your schedule where you weren't behind a desk for 8 hours a day. Maybe some days you were, some days you weren't. Am I right?
Yep, and that's a part of. So early on in my career, I worked a lot. I mean, I was as a new broker, I probably worked 70, 80 hours a week. So it was a lot to squeeze it all in and get it done. And when I had to work a whole lot, I mean, that's really why at the time, 2002, 2004, I only had two properties, and then from there, I was
Mhm.
mostly investing in the stock market. Once I, established myself at my job and had more flexibility, that's when I turned to real estate. Like, all right, well, the market's crashed. I have a lot more time and flexibility at work, so I can sort of, I have the time to manage these projects myself. So, depending on what type of person you are, because not everyone is the same kind of control freak that I am, right? So,
Mhm.
when it comes to some things, like I can totally give it up. I don't care. But when it comes to my money and projects and real estate, that's where I start to become a control freak. So for me, I need to be there personally. I need to see it. I mean, it's kind of killing me right now. I just purchased what will be a personal residence out in LA. So it kills me, the very fact that I can't be there every day watching what's going on, which is why I'm out there now at least 10 days a month, just, paying to stay somewhere else because I can't stay in the house during the construction. But because I have to be there and I have to see what's going on. Not everyone feels that way. And if you don't feel that, like, I need to be there to see what's going on in my project, then investing in real estate some other way is probably a better option for you, either through some sort of partnership program, partnering with someone who wants to be
Mhm.
boots on the ground, or, some sort of limited
Mhm.
partnership, or, REIT or
Yep.
something like that.
Yeah, I totally agree. I mean, you're saying if you aren't that person, then partner with that person. But somebody involved in your operations needs to be that person. You can't. You may have a burning desire to invest in real estate, but you don't have the time, and you maybe have someone else who can bring in the capital or the credit, but they don't have the time either. So it's like, okay, you definitely have to. I am a huge advocate for that. But like you said, look at like the REIT, passive investing, or anything like that. I think that's a really great tip. So with everything you have going on, I mean, you're buying up all of Philly, pretty much. You're expanding now to other markets. What is next for you? I know you alluded to it a little bit early on, mentioning you just uh, put in some offers on commercial space. So I mean, what's next? So like 1 year, 2 year, 3 year, 5, 10.
So my short term goal is to finish up. I still have roughly 17 units I need to finish rehabbing, get rented. And at that point,
Mhm.
my cash flow from my units will be pretty substantial. Roughly where I feel very comfortable. Figuring out from there just what is my game plan. So in the very short term, within the next hopefully 9 to 12 months, I can get most, if not all, of those units done, because some of them don't need a whole lot of work. I've got some that are finishing up now. So that's my short term. Beyond that, I'll probably do, depending on what the market does, because I'm always cognizant of what kind of market that we're in. People will say, oh, I think I want to be a flipper or what, how's the market look? How's the economy look? Are we in a flipping market? Are we not in a flipping market? So I'll take a look at once that's done. I'd like to pay down, as I mentioned, I have 5 mortgages. I'd like to pay those down as quickly as possible. So I may, once these units are done, I may flip a few properties just to get some of those mortgages paid down. And then beyond that, I probably will look more at some commercial space. I don't have any commercial properties now, so that's probably my next move. And then beyond that, I start thinking, 5 to 10 years from now, where am I? What kind of work am I doing? Am I still, working full time as an advisor with this real estate thing going? I'm starting to, give some thought to exactly what that looks like, because I would like to spend more of my time teaching and, helping our community who, these are just things that we don't really get that much exposure to. I'd like to spend more time.
No, not at all.
I'd like to spend more time, teaching people how to do that without really even having to worry about, charging people an arm and a leg. I mean, I've seen the prices of some of, these guru seminars. Like, they charging $15,000. Just listen to it.
Girl, 50. Did you say 15? You mean 50?
Oh my goodness, my God.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that's I can't even fathom that. I can't even that's interesting. But so that's kind of where I'm headed. We'll see.
Okay.
We'll see what happens.
Good. Okay, good. Well, I mean, this has been an amazing interview. I just have 2 more questions before I let you go, because it's so good, and there's so much to get out. I hope you guys have been taking your notes. I surely have. But just 2 last questions before I let you go. One is, you mentioned earlier on as you were speaking, you mentioned we. You mentioned we a lot. So, do you have investment partners or multiple partners, or what's that like? Or is it just you?
No, so it's a combination. So I have some projects that I have on my own. So when I was, the first property I bought in 2002, then I bought one with a partner. The one I bought in 2004, I bought with a partner, a guy I used to work with. And then when I started aggressively buying, when the real estate market crashed, that was by myself. And then 2013, I started investing with a real estate partner, Tamika. She has a similar philosophy that I do in terms of, we just want to throw as much capital and of our rent roll into growing and building. We don't need to take the money and, live lavishly now. So we have very similar long-term discipline structures. So a partnership, worked well. So she and I have been buying properties together since 2013, although since even 13, I've bought some projects on my own. In fact, the one that I was just mentioning, the 4-unit that I had to redo the HVAC and the electric, that is just my project. And then I just recently bought a 3-unit building with a guy who's a partner on my team at my actual job. So it was he and his wife, their first project, and it was a 3-unit. They kind of felt a little over their heads and asked me if I'd partner with them on that one as well. So a little bit of both. I've got my stuff. I've got my stuff, and I'm at least a 50% owner in anything that I've partnered with someone on.
Right. Of course. I love it. And how would you say, you mentioned, one of your main partners is a woman. I love that. That's what Flippin' and Heels is all about. How would you say having a partner has shaped, your investing strategy, or even, the trajectory of your investments? You obviously you started on your own and you have some things on your own, but having a partner, how, is there the good, the bad, the ugly, or is it, from where I sit, it looks all good, but tell us about that.
I've had partnerships that haven't worked out. I've not very many, because I'm not I'm not one that partners very easily.
Mhm.
So I've had partnerships that, just due to, thankfully, I've never had like a malicious partnership go really bad. I've never
Mhm.
that I have, or I like the partnership that I have specifically with my current real estate partner, or my main real estate partner, I should say, because one of the things that it did is it allowed us to cover more ground. So between
Mm.
our combined capital, we could just literally cover more territory. I mean, we could buy more
Right.
stuff. So if we were, trying to buy in South Philly or Allegheny West or the Temple medical area, we could sort of spread our inventory around to more areas being together, so that if money and I could only invest in Allegheny West or only in a particular area, I could be calling it wrong. So because we
Mhm.
wanted to sort of, try to figure out which way the market was going, it gave us the opportunity to just do more. And, so far so good.
So
It's
far, so
it's worked out.
good.
Yeah.
Love it, love it, love it. Okay. And the last question before I let you go, I mean, it's so many amazing gems that you've given us. Of course, for newbie investors, and particularly, we're talking to women, definitely. And because, I've mentioned this before on social media, when I was growing and trying to figure out and looking and searching, I spent money on guru programs. I attended webinars, seminars, the free ones, the cheap ones, whatever the case, just trying to figure it out. And I said, if I had more women around me that could pour into me, and I mean, and I was coming to the table with cash, with credit. I wasn't showing up looking for a handout. I was showing up saying, hey, like, this is what I have. These are the resources that I have. I'm ready to use them. And I'm trying to figure it out. So, so definitely speaking to the women who are looking to get started in investing, or just starting in investing. What's some advice? What's a main tip, or anything that you would just share?
Yep. So I talk a lot about discipline, which, it's funny because usually when I do real estate seminars, I think seasoned investors probably walk away thinking, well, that was a colossal waste of time, because she spent, most of the time talking about discipline. I don't have any sophisticated or advanced real estate purchase strategies. In fact, I follow Blacker Pockets, and they were talking about some like subject to land trust, like something crazy. And I was like, what the
Mhm.
heck are they talking about? Like, how I invest in real estate is very basic and very simple, just in ways that I can understand. Someone's selling a
Mhm.
house, I haggle them on the price. I buy the house, I rehab it, I rent it. Like, it's no more
Period.
complicated than that for me. Like, period. I
Right.
may get a little fancy and like buy it from a wholesaler or at an auction. Like, that's about as fancy as Ayesha gets. Like, all this
Mhm.
other like fancy business is thrown around. Like, I feel like, you're trying to teach an old dog new tricks. I don't care. No, I'm not doing that.
Mhm.
So, but what I spend most of my time talking to people about is, I think most investors get into so much trouble because you got to think, if there was a 2008 crash, it absolutely will happen again. And so many real estate
Right.
investors lost their shirts doing all these like sophisticated, fancy, like highfalutin subject to, I got all this, and then like most investors lost their shirts because they spent too much money increasing their lifestyle when they should have been paying down, all the debt they're taking out,
Mm.
all the loans, all the home equity. So, what I caution, what I tell new investors is you got to figure out and make sure before you even get into real estate that you've got the discipline and the wherewithal that it takes. That when that cash flow starts coming in, you're doing the right thing with it. When those rent rolls start
Mm.
adding up, when, you start, you flip a property or two, you get 40, 50 grand, 100 grand for the, in your hand, probably for the very first time all at once, that you make sure that you have the discipline to not just go out and spend the money. You should spend that time paying down the debt, paying down the mortgage, paying off the lines of credit that you took to, do all this stuff in the first place. Because where most investors get burned, and it's all fun and games in a period of boom, and you've got a lot of investors who got into the game like 2010, 11, 12, and they've never seen the market drop as much as it did in 2008. So you got all these gurus who are relatively new gurus who have not seen how bad things get when banks stop lending or banks call in, those loans. And, people are taking 80, 90% loan to value, or 80 or 90% of the value of their property out in loans, or they're still getting a shady appraiser to come out and say this building's worth a whole lot more than it's actually worth. And they're getting these big loans, and if the market pulls back and we have a bubble, like it goes really, really badly, really quickly. I've seen tons of gurus and real estate investors who had 50, 60, 100 properties lose everything because they were way over leveraged. And I'm always so confused. I'm like, how did you lose that all? Like you were getting, $150,000 a month in rent rolls. Like, where did that money go? And then you look at, you had this, $1.5 million house, and you had 6 cars, and you had like, of course you lost everything, idiot. Right. Like, how could you not have? So I tell new investors, these are, and I say all the time, how you do anything is how you do everything. Figure out now how to adjust your mindset that this is a long-term game. So when that $500 a month extra cash flow comes in, that $600, $700 a month cash flow, whatever your cash flow is, that comes in, you've got the discipline to not spend it, to not use it, because that's money that needs to go into your business. It's not even really yours to spend. So that's the advice I typically give to new investors. Quite frankly, it's also the advice I give to investors who've never been through a market collapse before, because after 17 years, I've seen how ugly it gets, and it's coming again. It's not a matter of if, will the market crash again? That's not the question. The question is, when will it crash again? And for people like me, market crashes are opportunities, because the last time
I was just about to say that. And when it does crash, what side of the coin are you going to be on? What are you going to be scared, or are you going to be excited?
I almost feel bad because it's like when the market crashes, there are people who lose their shirts. So True. It's like, well, are you happy about profiting off of someone? Well, no, I'm not, but they were kind of dumb, so it's one of those challenges, but like you said, what side of that coin are you going to be on?
So. And I love it. I mean, you have the opportunity now to make those decisions now. Don't wait till the market crashes to decide that, I'm over leveraged. Now I got to sell some stuff or whatever, No, you can decide now before you acquire or while you're still acquiring, to simply not over leverage. Yeah. Wow, man, so many amazing gems. We have literally taken up the entire hour for this interview. But this has been so good. Thank you so much for sharing all of the information that you have. So I don't know if you have, I know you're on Instagram. I know you mentioned, you're not really like tech savvy and stuff like that. I don't know. Do you have digital products, online courses? Do you have anything like that? If the people want to connect with you, where can they find you?
Digital what? I ain't got no digital product. No,
right.
Most of
workshops. Any events coming up?
ain't nobody got no time. This is my event coming up. This is it right here.
I know. Yeah, y'all. Aisha was a hard one to catch. Okay, so you be grateful that she gave us this hour. We appreciate it. You say I got no YouTube.
The other day, listen, you need to get a YouTube channel. A YouTube channel? Who the heck's even on? I don't even go on YouTube. Like, I don't even understand what's happening. So, but you can find me on Instagram. I'm at Ayesha Selden, and it's DEN, not ON. Ayesha Selden. That's where I, like, most of my info, I give it out on Instagram. I have a Facebook account, but I'm very rarely on there. But Instagram is where most people can get at me.
Same here. Well, I love it. Again, thank you so much for just sharing your experience, the information. I mean, literally, that I can't even put a price point on everything that you just dropped right now. It's truly priceless, and I definitely wholeheartedly believe that the information that you just shared will help somebody either make better decisions or make good decisions before they make bad ones. So it's much appreciated. So thank you so much.
Cool. Thank you so much for your time. It was a great call. And we'll talk soon. I'm sure you and I will be connected on social media as well.
Oh, absolutely. Okay. All right. Thanks. Bye
Cool.
bye.
Thanks. Bye.